Alright, draft physics video. Pretty sure. Probably should bring this camera over here. It's actually got the microphone in it. Anyway, cowboy guy. Just harassing me to pay attention to him, and as if he's making some kind of argument. He made an hour-long video. I watched, 3 or 4 minutes, and these aren't arguments. They're not evidence. The whole argument I'm making is that your evidence is weak. You're not explaining how your evidence is strong. And he just makes these, declarations that certain things aren't possible, that are just silly. Because he doesn't have any argument to defend his theory of impossibility. So anyway, we'll just play some of this shit. I have sped it up, and there's no video quality, so I figured I probably shouldn't even include the video. And maybe I want to draw something. I doubt it, but we'll see.
What would the universe look like if there was only one force in it? How would one be able to tell that it was traveling the speed of light?
Who cares? It's like saying, what if the universe was just one turtle? Does it still have a shell? Yeah. Even though nobody can see it or nobody's noticing it, it's still there. The properties still exist. Why do I care about speculating about a universe of one thing? It's not the universe we exist in, so why is it a relevant question? Oh, that's right. It's not relevant. It's just a silly distraction.
Wait a minute. That does not make any sense. Because in order for there to be an observer to this solitary ton...
Who cares about the observer? Again, it's just totally irrelevant. So you think observers make things in reality, that there's no Saturn until we saw it, no Pluto till we saw it. I just don't see any point in that kind of philosophy, so we don't agree. All right, you're a crazy person, in my opinion, a religious kook, if that's what you think. Observers are irrelevant to the properties things have. As I've pointed out, child is the important thing with the properties. Who cares who owns the child?
There must be an instrument to take the measurement. And there must, of course, be at least one person to take the measurement.
Right, and who are you talking to? Aliens or something? Well, yeah, duh. But who cares? Well, why do I need to measure anything in a universe where I don't exist? If it just exists and there's no other ambitions or motives in the universe, then yes, nobody needs to measure it. But I'm sure whatever exists, exists. It has its properties. If it spits acid or it smells like, shit, like you, then yeah, it still smells like shit.
From the instrument. And both of these things would be composed of billions and billions of tons. So it just...
Yes, no matter what the universe is made of, it's going to be containing a lot of stuff. I think most rational people understand that there's lots of stuff. Whether it's little sparky unicorn poo or whatever, little drops of unicorn urine, who cares? There's a lot of it moving about. You don't understand that? Then you're really fucking dumb. Just like there's lots of stars in the sky. There's lots of little bits inside of everything. Idiot.
It does not really make sense to talk about the speed of a ton in a universe in which there is only one ton. But for the sake of...
yes, for the sake of argument, it's not... If it exists and it's moving, it has to be something less than instantaneous then. So if it's less than instantaneous, it's a speed. It's something less than instantaneous. This much less or this much less, but something less. You're too dumb to figure that out?
Argument, we will assume that it is possible to talk about such things, if only in the abstract.
Who cares? Again, who the fuck cares? What does this have to do with your defense of wacky assumptions like Heisenberg and Huygens and dark matter and dark energy and anti-particles? Where are you discussing the evidence that justifies your presumption that these are accurate descriptions of reality? Fuckhead.
So the point is, there is no sense in which the ton is moving at all, unless you measure the movement of the ton relative to empty space.
Well, again, you don't have to measure it. If it's actually moving, just like the turtle has its shell, if it's actually moving, then it's moving. Nobody needs to measure it to say it's moving. It's doing what it's doing. Pluto's moving, even though we're not measuring it. Idiot.
But I thought space was nothingness. So in what sense can we talk about the speed of a photon relative to nothingness?
Yeah, it's not relative to nothingness. It's relative to a position in the nothing. The nothing has a volume. It fills the nothing with nothing. So it is spatial. That's why it's called space. You understand? Space is a word for things that are spatial in 3 dimensions. So the 3 dimensions still exist, shithead. Whether anything's using them or not, they still exist, and there's coordinates in them. And if it moves from one coordinate place to another coordinate place, it moved it. Nobody needs to measure it. It did it. Dumb fuck.
Itself. Welcome. Welcome to episode 1 of a series of indefinite length, wherein we examine wrong-headed notions about science.
Yes, well, what we're going to examine is futilely stupid conversations with inane fanatics who don't know what the word evidence means.
Until then, dig a grave for the pieces and bury them for good. So, one of the rhetorical devices that science deniers often...
Yeah, no, science protectors. You're the people who are raping science with your you're conflicting directly. I mean, you have theories that don't mesh, that don't match, that have different assumptions, different axioms. You're the ones who are raping logic and what could be called an attempt to honestly and accurately describe reality. You're the ones engaging in fantasy.
Use is to call modern physics a religion, or to say that the claims made by modern physics is akin to a belief in unicorns.
Yes, it's akin to belief in dark matter. It's akin to just making up a fantasy character that solves your problems. God comes to the rescue. God will take care of it. Silver lining on the clouds. It's just made up crap to fix your broken assumptions.
And fairies, ghosts, and goblins. The problem with this is that it's never backed up with any supporting argument.
It's backed up with supporting argument and supporting, more importantly, evidence. Evidence of the grotesque disregard for anything called reason. Again, defend a science publication publishing an article that claims to establish the speed of gravity and compares it to light speed, and has a 25% margin of error. What value can a fucking experiment with a 25% margin of error possibly have in establishing the speed of something?
The claim is made, and then it's just expected that this statement should be so obvious.
Again, it's not expected. It's a fucking lengthy arguments about how beam splitters are diffraction gradients. Lengthy arguments about how your 2-slit experiment pattern doesn't match your mathematics. Lengthy arguments about how you use Huygens in the single slit and all of a sudden Huygens goes away and you have single point sources in the double slit math. Tons of evidence pointing out how there isn't anything valuable in this thing you think of as called evidence, that it's a mess. All your lensing images make zero fucking logical sense. They're not coherent to all the other axioms you claim to be true. Your claim that gravity bends light, okay, it doesn't fit with the logical fact that gravity has to be consistent over distance, and that it has to change by the inverse square law, and that the inverse square law doesn't make a fucking goddamn optical lens. You just disregard the fact that your fucking goddamn statements, your declarations of truth, are founded on rubbish as evidence. Absolute stinking smelling rubbish.
Be the most obvious thing in the world that general relativity, quantum mechanics, and Huygens' principle of wave propagation is so clearly...
It's not even wave propagation, it's wave creation. The wave is created by the micro waves. The little waves created by the wave. It's so fucking made up. Not one shred of evidence that there's any kind of wavar that shoots out of photons.
Nonsensical on its face to a reasonable person that no justification for the comparison is necessary.
No, I've made tons of justifications and explanations how this is nothing but God of the gaps. You see something, you don't understand it, and you basically just go, God did it. The dark matter's doing it. The secret energy's doing it. The vacuum energy is pushing the plates together, right? When it's been already established, right? Now they've turned this experiment into some sort of proof of vacuum energy, when all it's proof of is that electrons and protons are rigid in their function, and they will not create charge on plates, because they're going to go left, right, left, right, left, right. They're going to go proton, electron, proton, electron, proton, electron, and if they hit empty space, they're going to go proton, electron, proton, electron, proton, electron. They're going to force the balance to exist, the symmetry, and that's all that's proven. Yeah, the plates charge all by themselves, in the sense that they create the most minuscule of charges, but they establish the fact that one has to go negative and one has to go positive, because it can't fucking function if it doesn't. The matter doesn't work then.
One of the things that ought to be a follow-up question to any of these unmitigated gobshites that do this is to say,
yes, you're the unmitigated, silly fucking straw hat, so you're sitting there in your fucking old lady straw hat telling me about who's unmitigated retard talking way beyond their competence. You're the fucking idiot who can't defend your indefensible, evidence-weak, logically disgraceful science. It's all just fantasy talk. It's all just made up SpongeBob bullshit.
okay, so relativity and quantum mechanics are unicorn theories. Then how do you know unicorns are not real? Is it because you've never seen one? There are many things.
No, again, it's the evidence. So again, you just keep ignoring the fact that the evidence is supposed to be pointing to what we believe in. There's no evidence for Huygens. There's no evidence for Heisenberg. You have this very indirect, very weak evidence. That's the point. The point is your evidence requires a whole bunch of extrapolation and assumptions to make it at all even a little bit sensible. And instead of finding the real problem, that's obviously going to be some kind of simple thing, you're just coming up with the silly notions, and they get sillier and sillier. The more room I give you to go silly, you go sillier and sillier. And so a two-slit experiment normally turns into first Heisenberg, and then it turns into Huygens, and then you expand it to many universes, and then you expand it to photons. There's one single photon jumps all over the whole universe, and because it can time travel. You give you people an inch, and you'll take 500 miles of fantasy. You'll have the three bears and tutus in no time.
I've never seen, like for instance, I traveled to Europe, South America, Australia, and Africa, but I have never set foot on the continent of Antarctica. How do I know it?
Again, we know by evidence, because there's pictures and we have reliable witnesses. There's a difference between reliable and unreliable. That's why they voir dire, witnesses when they come into court, to see that establish that they aren't compulsive liars and that they've been reliable in the past. So there's lots of ways we can know Antarctic's existence without me personally having to go there, because there's reliable evidence of it. Again, where's your reliable evidence of Huygens as a principle?
It exists. Perhaps unicorns live there, and since I've never been there, I really have no way of verifying.
Yeah, you do. The presence or absence of evidence is the way you verify something. Darwin collected a whole bunch of evidence, killed a bunch of little critters, pinned them to a board, okay, with all the little subtle differences, and pointed out how the only way you can explain this is this one's related to that one, and they bred selectively, and it makes perfectly good sense. It's logical. There's a ton of evidence. The birds are doing that. The turtles are doing that. Everything's doing the same fucking thing. I guess that's called evidence. Where's your fucking evidence?
Whether unicorns exist or not. Unless there's another possibility. We'll be exploring this concept further at some point. But for now,
this is just so you can see how this is just such a waste of time. I mean, I have no interest in your poetic, your sophistry, your little storytelling bullshit. What I'm interested in is your nail in the coffin evidence. And you don't have any of that, fuckhead. You're just a pompous douche.
It's good enough to recognize that the statement modern physics is a fairy tale is not an argument. It's just an assertion which is made by these scientists.
Yes, and it's backed up with the evidence. Again, I pointed to another article where the article claims, this other star is creating lensing twice. Not only it lends something twice, and the images in the article don't even match the article. They don't even. They have nothing. They're not coherent to the argument being made in the article. This is how you establish your science. It's made out of shit. You talk about fucking solar radiation coming out of two neutron stars that they're spinning around each other. 3 solar masses worth of this radiation. But it's not any kind of radiation because it somehow expands and contracts space. It's not fucking radiation. Radiation can't do that. Light can't do that. Radioactivity can't do that. How can it be called radiation when it doesn't have any of the properties of radiation?
Nice. But nevertheless, if we are to participate in this marketplace of ideas and appeal to these science deniers and their idiotic followers, then we must give.
So again, the idiotic cabal, the Borg, of we're just gonna, I watched Suskind the other day talking, and he's one of these people who doesn't want to believe in determinism. So, of course he's going to create holographic bullshit and other kinds of nonsense. Because he really doesn't want to live in a world where, I'm just a robot. Yeah, he doesn't like that truth.
Each of their objections to modern science is due consideration. So in light of this, we will begin with nothingness. After all, one cannot be accused of being a religious coup.
So again, this whole idea of we always have to talk about creation. I'm not interested in creation. I've made it as clear as possible. I don't give a fuck how the universe began. I don't think a rational person thinks they can answer that question because there's no fucking evidence. It's like solving a crime that's 400 years old. There's just no fucking evidence trail. There's no footprints. There's nothing. There's no way to do it. So why bother? Why waste time figuring out how the first fucking electron was born? It's a useless pursuit. We know what's in the universe right now. We know this desk exists. We know the light's coming off the screen. We know lots of shit about the world that exists. And that's what the argument's about, jackass. It's not about fucking creation, you stupid cunt.
By merely positing the existence of nothing. Of course, when I say nothing, I mean space, empty space, completely devoid of matter and energy. Is there a sense of up, down, left, and right in this void? Is it still true that there are 12 inches to a foot and 5,280 feet to a mile?
Yes, I would say there's still 3 dimensions, right. So if you want to blow up the dimensions, go ahead. I'm saying that 3 dimensions always exist, will always exist. They're coordinate spatial locations that, yes, the space is going to exist, whether something's in it or nothing's in it. The idea of space exists. Yes, that's my claim. Who cares, though? Who the fuck cares? What does it have to do with a particle theory of gravity, jackass? Or my actual explanation of how magnets work, jackass? How are you debunking any of that? Oh, that's right, you're not. You're just wasting my fucking time.
5.88 trillion miles to a light year? Wait a minute. How do we know that light year is in this hypothetical nothingness? Is there any way we can talk meaningfully about these concepts in an empty universe? It is certainly questionable whether one can say the distance means anything in this great empty. However, I believe you would find yourself hard.
There's no point. Okay, let me try to imagine infinite nothing. Oh, and then let me try to imagine infinite something. Oh, wait a minute. They're both impossible to imagine. Newsflash, it doesn't fucking matter.
That's to abandon the idea of orientation. That is to say, left, right, up, down, in this empty space. Of course, these ideas of left, right, up, and down are totally dependent on a fixed vantage point. So perhaps since there is no...
Again, this is really getting insanely irrelevant. I mean, obviously up, down have to do with orientation of a perceiver, okay? So it's never up, down, left, right, forward, back. It just never is for one object. It just is dimension 1, dimension 2, and dimension 3, and they're arbitrarily assigned. Dimension X, dimension Y, dimension Z. Doesn't matter what you identify them with what specific name you do give them. You can call it Jim Turtle or Bob Turtle or Fred Turtle. It doesn't matter. There's 3 turtles, and they're identifiable as that one, and that one.
vantage point in this hypothetical is there can be no orientation. However, I believe that this line of reasoning misses the point. The point of talking about empty space in the first place is to talk about these abstract properties of space, like the fact that distance is a symmetry, that it is orientable, and that, given a particular vantage point, these properties exist in a real sense.
Okay, now I just argue, you can say, so again, that's a God theory. Right there, you're already starting to invent a God. You're saying that space has properties. No, it doesn't. It has dimensions. That's it. And they don't carry any properties. This dimension is no different than this dimension, is no different than this dimension. They don't have any properties. Only the things in it can have properties. The things, the something. The dimensions are dimensions of nothing. No evidence that they have rulers built into them or any of that bullshit. They're just spatial coordinates, fuck brain.
Regardless of whether there is any observer sitting in space to define and measure said properties. These properties are intrinsic in the concept of space. Remember, we use the word. Put another way, what is the difference between an empty universe where time, width, length, and breadth exist even if there is nothing to measure them with?
Look, another way to look at it is any kind of space has to fill a container. Containers always have, even a round container is essentially a square container with just rounded corners. So you just understand it as the container has faces. That's it. It has spherical opposites. Period. It goes this way, it goes that way, it goes this way, it goes that way, it goes that way, it goes that way. That's all. Nothing more. Not terribly complex. Why is this relevant, you fucking inane shit for brain?
Universe in which there is no dimensionality. Certainly it is becoming less and less coherent to talk about empty space as true nothing. Even in the case that the universe is compressed to a zero-dimensional space, we can still distinguish this case from true.
So again, he's just an ether believer, and he thinks everything has to be a something. So he thinks it's more conceivable. A box full of something is more conceivable than a box full of nothing. For whatever reason, to him, that's more imaginable. Not to me.
Nothingness in which nothing, not even a zero-dimensional universe, exists. Okay, so at this point, you might be saying this is all fine and good, but at the end of the day, is this pointless philosophical hand-waving? Perhaps there's no such thing as a zero-dimensional universe, and it doesn't make sense to talk about nothingness in such
I don't know, I guess he wrote this shit and he's reading it. Yeah. Again, yeah, so he's basically saying, yes, who the fuck could possibly care except for somebody wanting to waste somebody else's time? So yes, victory for you. You're wasting my fucking time.
Abstract terms, okay. Hey, fair enough. But admit that your intuitive notions about space and time are derived from your experiences with reality. You've had experiences, and then built a model of empty space based on them. And therefore, should not be taken.
No, so this assumption that that's what scientists are supposed to do is just grotesquely make assumptions. No, they're supposed to collect evidence and attempt to make reasoned conclusions. That is, they're supposed to have enough evidence to convict. So based on how important the conviction is, how important the axiom they're establishing is, or the law they're establishing, the evidence has to be commensurate to how vital this particle wave thing. If you're going to make a decisive decision, it's a wave, it's a particle. Well, then you have to have evidence that justifies this critical change in reality you're making, where you're saying, no, it's a wave. Everything will now be built on, this foundation. You're creating a foundation. And the axioms that are, the cinder blocks, if you're not going to make it out of solid blocks, you're just going to make it out of imaginary blocks, yeah, that's not good science. And that's the science you're defending. You're fucking pseudo-scientist.
It's granted that there exists a bijection between the properties of something abstract like nothingness and empty space. It exists. It is meaningless work like this. Say something like space is nothingness, and matter cannot act on nothing. If you are going to make this argument, then you have to justify it better.
I don't have to justify it because I'm not saying space, the nothing is acting on anything. Where did I say space, the nothing is acting on anything? Where did I give it properties? No, you're the assholes who are giving space properties. I'm not giving space properties. I'm giving the something in the fucking space properties. You fucking cunt. The word you're making fun of, Twan theory. Yes, I'm giving the things that we can identify as individual things with properties. Those things have the properties, jackass, not this fucking space.
Shifting back to a more philosophical view, suppose that you were a two-dimensional being living in a two-dimensional universe. How would you be able to tell you?
Yeah, well, guess what? That's what a photon is a one-dimensional being. It's a one-dimensional entity. It only does one thing. It moves in one direction, and it keeps doing it forever unless it hits a piece of matter, a matter bit.
Living on a flat plane or on a round sphere? Would there be any way to test this? Likewise, how can you, a three-dimensional biological organism designed by evolution to be nothing more than a steaming, striding, reckless cockroach-like machine?
So let's understand that we know that there's a basic geometry that's pretty rigid in the sense that we understand these spatial dimensions, these planar dimensions of the opposites, okay, that basically build the cube or build the circle. You know, a hexagon, doesn't matter how you alter the sides, doesn't make any difference. We understand the two faces. The two faces to the sphere are the two sides to the square. And that geometry of 3 dimensions is solid. Your invention of, well, we could add a 4th, and we could add a 7th, and we could add a 12th. Adding dimensions has nothing again to do. There's absolutely no way to draw it, conceive of it, make any kind of anything. You can't add it. I can draw a one-dimensional line. I can draw 2 dimensions. I can draw 3 dimensions. I can illustrate them at least. You can't illustrate your 4th dimension or your 5th dimension. And certainly time has nothing to do with geometry.
Be able to tell whether it lives in a Newtonian universe or a universe within space. How would you ever tell the difference? Is it meaningful to ask the question in the first place? You need to answer these for yourself.
I don't have to answer them at all. Again, they're totally irrelevant to whether or not light is a particle or light is a wave. Totally irrelevant. Can't possibly have any meaning to this conversation whatsoever. Whether electrons and protons are actually magnetic monopoles, quite clearly. It's something Susskind can't figure out. You know, something your physicist can't figure out that, oh yeah, it's the position of electrons and protons that create the phenomenon of magnetism, and yet these assholes are too stupid to figure out those are magnetic monopoles, electrons and protons. That's exactly what they're functioning as, magnetic monopoles. And so this idiot says, well, I think if we invent a magnetic monopole, we'll be able to destroy protons and rip them to pieces. Well, obviously it doesn't happen because there's magnetic monopoles all over the fucking universe. The proton itself is a magnetic monopole. It doesn't destroy itself. God, you people are just so fucking stupid.
Well, before you come on to YouTube shooting your mouth off and making a general ass out of yourself.
Again, the demonstration of who's the ass in this conversation should be quite obvious. 8 minutes and 30 seconds. What one piece of evidence did he provide? What logical paradox did he expose? What evidence did he demonstrate that makes my theory incompatible with the evidence that exists? Where did he do any of that? No, nowhere. He's just a shit talker.
In spite of this, there has been a lot of large talk made about general relativity from these science facts. For instance, it is claimed there's no such thing as inertial reference frames. Usually people saying this have no idea what an inertial reference frame is. This probably...
No, the argument is deeper than that, and you're just too stupid to figure it out. There's a difference between claiming something as an actual thing, as if physics is contained in these separate bubbles, and that there's no absolute physics that underlies everything else. So to say relativity exists, certainly everything's relative to something else. 2 cannonballs on Earth sitting on the surface of the Earth that we can theorize are moving, and they're both moving exactly the same way because their position is proving it. The fact that they're not deviating from each other, they're staying consistent with each other. So yes, their relative position is the same, exactly. But the fact that they have an absolute condition, that is, they are rotating on the Earth and they are flying through space, is a goddamn fact. Okay? You want to pretend that fact doesn't exist with your relativity. That you can break physics into little bubbles and say, I can shoot photons over here, and then I can move that bubble this way, and even though that means the light's going faster than the speed of light, that's okay. I can move light faster than the speed of light if I put it inside a bubble, inside another relativity bubble. So I can just build a bunch of relativity bubbles and end up having light going 17,000 times the speed of light. Bullshit, you can't. Your relativity bubbles is bullshit. So relativity as a fact, as if you can escape absolute physics with it, is nonsense.
Not for want of time to devote oneself to the study of the subject. It is found that those making these claims have an incredible amount of time with which to dedicate themselves on a great many topics, including Einstein's theories. However, I will provide for them a crash course of sorts on the topic of inertial reference frames. This is a fundamental piece of mental machinery which will prove indispensable for the arguments to follow.
Right. So another completely irrelevant conversation. We've been over relativity. You don't have any evidence that light carries two momentums. You don't have any evidence that the light jumps into the future to look normal even though you're going half the speed of light. You have zero evidence demonstrating that light does any of the things you claim it to do. So you're just making an argument, a God argument. This is why I love Jesus. This is why I love Jesus. And none of those explanations are going to mean anything to me. They're of absolutely no value. You love him because you want to, lick his penis or something. You like penis. I mean, it has nothing to do with anything I give a shit about, fuckhead. It has to do with your perversion, not mine.
First, we start with the definition. The coordinate system is a set of variables x1, y, and x2 dot 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 all the way up to xn, such that there exists a bijection between sets to be ordered in couples and points of some n space or n manifold. Admittedly, this definition is a bit obtuse, so let's look at some examples to help you understand a bit more clearly.
Again, so you're just making my point for me. Yes, and those coordinate positions are absolute in the space. The two cannonballs on Earth, although moving the same way, they have different coordinates they're moving, and although they will move parallel through space, if we don't interfere with them in any way, because they're obviously don't move over millions of years. They just stay the same two positions right next to each other, same distance. So they're obviously moving in parallel to each other, and so their coordinates will have a symmetry, but they won't be identical.
And cue the animation. We don't have any animation down here, so we're just going to improvise. Alright, so this is a number line. And pretend you have a number line right here. Okay. Number line is an example of a coordinate system. Perhaps the simplest example of a coordinate system that isn't trivial. So if you have a geometric line segment, okay, here's the line segment. Okay, that's a one-dimensional space. And you have some arbitrary point x naught in that line segment right here. Then you can assign to that point the coordinate 0. And then you can assign to another arbitrary point on the line the coordinate 1. And if you do that, there's really no choice for how the coordinates match up with points on the line. Each whole number, n, okay,
again, how does this prove you can create relative frames that make light go faster than the speed of light?
Responds to a point on the line that is a positive distance from the point n minus 1, and that distance is equal to the distance between the points 0 and 1. Okay, other examples include the Cartesian coordinate system. Points in this coordinate system consist of ordered pairs of numbers x, y. In 3 space, all that is needed to define a coordinate system are 4 non-coplanar points, 1 corresponding to the 0 vector, and 3 corresponding to 3 spatial dimensions. And as before, these points define an entire coordinate system such that every point in the 3 space corresponds to a unique vector, x, y, z.
Right, but you always have to establish your reference point. So again, you're always going to, in some way, impose on the system by saying, well, here's absolute 0. So, otherwise you're going to need a lot more information. But you always have to make it relative to some arbitrary thing that you're going to establish as the thing. Now, if we had the science to do it, maybe we could find where the initial singularity was, or maybe we could find some other absolute reference. Maybe the universe isn't a bubble. Maybe it's a lot of things. So then maybe we can get a better coordinate system. But whatever one we're going to establish is going to be rather arbitrary, and therefore it might be fairly inconsistent, because if you're in a smoke ring expanding, and you establish your 0 point over here in your expanding smoke ring, and on one side of it, is the camera still working? I'm just checking. Something's not looking right. Yeah, it's fine. So then obviously it would be very broken for you in your side of the smoke signal, because this one's moving in the opposite direction relevant to your plus y. See, because your smoke ring is moving this way and that one's moving that way, and that can give you a false perception because everything's going to be inverted because you've established one. You've imbalanced the zero. The zero isn't from the middle anymore. The zero is from the skewed position. But who cares? How is this again? How does this mean particle gravity can't be true? How does this mean that my theory of magnetism can't be correct? How does it mean how my establishing a mechanism for the interaction of protons and electrons that actually explains the strong nuclear and weak nuclear forces, how are you demonstrating I'm wrong? You're not doing any of that. You're just wasting my fucking time.
Of course, we are not limited to coordinate systems of three dimensions. We have coordinate systems corresponding to higher dimensional spaces. In fact, mathematicians have discovered spaces with infinite dimensions. We will not go into all of that for now.
Right, so he just made a claim to his other super God. Well, we've established the existence of God, and we also have double God and triple God and mega God and whoop-de-whoop-de-whoop-de-doo God. You know, we have all kinds of gods, you know, that we haven't really established any hard evidence demonstrating. We've just said we theoretically like this idea. Now let's create some fake dark matter and some fake vacuum space energy and some other bullshit, and maybe we'll have some annihilation and creation in here, and we'll make this work with a bunch of bullshit, a bunch of Huygens gimmicks, made up crap for which there is zero evidence of it being real.
And any individual space needed with a coordinate system consisting of a set of n coupled with real numbers. It is noteworthy that many of the results to follow about inertial reference frames can be deduced without using coordinate systems. To do so would be time-consuming and overly complicated, but it is worth noting. And you may find the notion of bijection between...
Again, I don't see how this adds to the conversation. The conversation is way past this nonsense, getting into details about what are the mechanics of actual moving bodies in these multiple frames that they could end up being in, and what would be the implications of that. And the implications of that is you're giving two momentums to an object that there is no evidence can carry two momentums, that can convert two momentums into one momentum. That would be an addition of the momentums. That is, its speed would increase. There's no evidence you can increase the speed of a photon.
Coordinates and points in space be philosophically questionable or problematic. Definition. An inertial reference frame is a collection of physical bodies such that the net force acted upon them is zero. For example, if we negate the gravitational force of the galaxy, one may think of the solar system as an inertial.
Again, this net force is a tricky word because it's only the net forces that have already acted on something. It has nothing to do with the forces that can act on them right now. So if I want to separate the ends of these scissors, right now they're same force. I separate them. There, I've changed it now. They're no longer in the same inertial reference frame.
System. Although the planets are being acted upon by the sun and the sun by the planets, if we consider the system as a whole, the net force is zero. If one wishes to plot the trajectories of the planets, suns, and...
Well, it's not a net zero. So again, that's silly because every single one of those bodies is creating a theoretically infinite energy thing. They're affecting the density, the balance of energy, and they're doing it spreading across the entire universe. So to call it a net zero doesn't make a hell of a lot of sense to me, because their velocity is actually what that is made out of. The fact that they have imbalanced the universe around them is a consequence. They're moving. That's what's creating the gravity. They're absorbing something to move.
Asteroids and other debris in the solar system with respect to a fixed coordinate system, you could place the point 0, 0, 0 at the center of mass of the solar system, and one could then calculate the average force acting on each object with respect to the coordinate system, and it would add to 0. Now, if we consider another...
Says you. So somehow he knows that the universe blew up exactly symmetrically, when no explosion is exactly symmetrical just by the laws of probability. There's going to be a head or a tail that, you know, slightly out of balance. There's going to be some imbalance. So his claim that he knows it was perfect symmetry is wrong, just as he doesn't understand the two metal plates brought to, you know, without charge on them, brought in proximity to each other, and how they establish a charge. One goes negative, one goes positive. And that will be by a law of probabilities, by the fact that they are different, and one of them is different a little bit. One short one head, and the other one's got one plus heads versus tails, pennies. And that little subtle difference will decide this one goes negative, this one goes positive.
Inertial reference frame, for instance, let's suppose that there is a massive asteroid which has escaped from another galaxy, and is headed towards planet Earth at 2 million miles per hour. We might consider such a scenario a doomsday nightmare. But for a nephilist, this might be considered a merciful conclusion to the saga of sentient...
Yeah, it's another waste of time. I mean, I have this separate channel called Draft Physics. I really don't want to talk about how life is futile and stupid on this channel. That's not the purpose of this channel, you fucking cunt. Just like I don't like listening to physicists talking about how, oh, determinism isn't real because we have a probability wave that says so. Yeah, I don't like that conversation. That's just rubbish conversation. This isn't about determinism. This isn't about whether we're fucking monsters and we're insensitive douchebags and silly fucking hats. That's not what the subject is, fucking cunt.
Life on planet Earth. From the point of view of the reference frame of the asteroid, our galaxy is the object moving at 2 million miles per hour, while the asteroid is stationary. Not only that, but the net force acting on the solar system is zero.
Yeah, the fact that you can pervert the universe and play these thought games with it and say, oh, wait a minute, I'm going to make everything else move and the thing that's moving isn't really moving. But guess what? That doesn't really work out. So mathematically, we can figure out that just because of the point you were making before about total energy, there's no evidence that justifies the conclusion that the entire universe contains the momentum and that it's behaving in a manner consistent with it being doing the moving, because that would have a consequence. The left side wouldn't, the side behind the thing moving wouldn't be doing what it's supposed to do. And if you make the stuff in front appear correct, so if you get the front stuff right, the back stuff won't be right, and if you get the back stuff right, the front stuff won't be right. So there's no law that you can't do it. The problem is just like with Heisenberg. It isn't about that we can't ever do it or that there's no theoretical way to do it. It's that we don't have the tools to do it. But it's doable. It's detectable. Just because you're too dumb to do it. Again, muons aren't going to change how they're radioactive if they don't have the velocity. If we move the Earth, if we could theoretically move the Earth into the muons, I'll guarantee you the muons will not change their radioactive decay rate. Dumbass. Back. Cat. He's a bit of a burden.
In both the coordinate system we apply to the solar system as well as that to the asteroid. If you are interested in how one can define summation of vectors in 3 space, I suggest you read a fucking book. Now, one of the assumptions of special relativity is this. If one were to plot the...
So again, where's the evidence, the hard evidence that this is the truth of our reality? And again, how is this relevant to whether or not gravity is made out of discrete, ultramundane bits of energy, are made out of some sort of expanding and contracting space thing, ether thing? Where's your evidence of your ether thing?
Trajectory of a single photon as it leaves our sun and heads in the direction of the asteroid from our scenario is that the speed of this photon is calculated to be the same in both of our aforementioned coordinate systems. Now, as a reality check, it might be a good idea to ask yourself if anything that I've so far talked about is registering with your higher mental faculties. In particular, are you able to perform mental operations on the machinery which have been set up in the expository material that has been presented so far? If you cannot...
Whatever. Yeah, yes, like you made some sort of relevant argument. No, there's not a single relevant argument. 15 minutes of just wasted fucking time.
Answer in the affirmative. It might be suggested that the topic of physics is beyond your pay grade, in a manner of speaking.
I think you're demonstrating it's above your pay grade to understand the concept that this is a trial. You're putting statements of declarations of truth. People are making declarations of truth. Dark matter, vacuum energy, dark energy, Huygens, Heisenberg. They're making declarations of how things, anti-particles, everything has an anti-constituent, blah, blah, annihilation events, creation events. This is virtual photons. These are your declarations, and I've put them on trial. And you're showing up and talking this rubbish instead of showing evidence how these things are rationally established, are reasonably established with a reasonable amount of evidence to be somehow relevant to reality and not just made up crap. You haven't demonstrated how they're not made up crap. No evidence, just made up like God. God was made up by men. It wasn't some thing in the universe that fell on humanity. No, human beings made God out of clay probably first. You know, but that's all God is, and that's all your creations are, God theories.
Fine to have myriad interests, but at the end of the day, there are certain people who just shouldn't study things like physics or mathematics or philosophy or anything requiring a superior level of mental faculty.
So I guess he thinks he has a superior amount of mental faculty, and he's wearing an old lady's straw hat. I mean, cliche, tinfoil loony.
Physics isn't your thing. Perhaps it's time to turn the video off. Go take a walk and enjoy life instead of working yourself into a frothing frenzy over YouTube videos. Just a thought. If you are ready to continue, then fantastic. Okay.
No, I work myself into a frenzy because I live in a world full of fucking idiots. Fucking-ocracy. And you're the definition. Right there. You're a poster child for what's wrong with the human fucking race. You dim-witted, Borg dick-sucking loser of a fucking asswipe.
So what were we talking about? Oh yeah, how stupid your crank science theory is. Light travels at a constant speed c in all inertial reference frames. I claim this as a fact.
I claim it as a fact, so that's where you don't even get it. I'm the one claiming the speed of light can't be broken. You're the one claiming that your inertial frames do in fact make light travel more distance in the same amount of time. That's what the light does. It travels more distance in the same amount of time, which means it had to go faster, jackass. You're the asshole saying light goes faster than light.
Not mean by this that light travels in picture frames or that light gets framed for murder. I mean that light travels at c in all inertial reference frames.
You just can't say that and then say light goes to the further distant away future. That it travels the extra distance of the diagonal line, and that the extra distance of the diagonal line doesn't require more time to travel. It does.
That's it. Now, with a claim like this, it's always a good idea to ask, how do you know? Well, one way is to ask another question. What would the universe look like if the converse statement were true? That is, what would a universe where light travels at c in one and only one preferred?
No, in the absolute frame, which is the frame. It has an absolute speed based on absolute space, and it will never do anything else, and your perception is irrelevant, what you think light's doing. And again, you don't have any evidence of even your perception. All you have is atomic clocks and chemistry that changes its decay rate, changes its functional rate based on velocity. That's all you have is evidence. You don't have anything called evidence of that you've ever shown that light can do this magical thing of going to the further away future, that it can do what a baseball does. You have no evidence that light can do what baseballs do, which is my hand I can be moving on a bus, I can throw the baseball, and the baseball automatically takes both velocities and turns them into a perpendicular vector of change and moves a new speed. Light doesn't do that shit for brain.
Reference frame look like? What observations would one make in that universe? Well, clearly, since the Earth is rotating at a speed of roughly 1,000 miles per hour, is traveling around the sun at approximately 66,000 miles per hour, and is traveling around the center of mass of the galaxy at roughly 483,000 miles per hour, we would notice if there was a privileged...
Now, you say you would. How would you notice? Those directions are changed every single millisecond. Your vector is different. Every single moment, the angle that you're moving is changed. The combined velocities, again, the word net, you used it before. Do you understand what net means? It means that all your motions are combined into one motion. And so to claim that you know all of the motions, that you know the motion of the galaxy in the universe, that you know the motion of the sun in the galaxy, that you know the motion of the galaxy might be rotating in another direction also, that you know any of those motions and that you can add them all up and say that somehow we would notice. No, we might only be going 10 miles an hour because all of those motions might, by the logic of the universe, the symmetry it tends to impose, the fact that it doesn't have the net balance of the entire universe, I would agree, is likely zero. That is, there's just as much stuff going this way as that way, as that way, as that way, as that way, as that way. And so somehow, if you create a whole bunch of stuff moving one way this way, there has to be a whole bunch of stuff somewhere else going one way that way. So yeah, it tends to balance. So maybe these motions are complementary, jackass. Did you ever give that a second thought? That maybe the motions, when you add them all up, they don't get faster, it gets slower because those motions are complementary. Dumbass.
Reference frame of the universe. Since we don't observe such a privileged reference frame, we can definitively conclude that light does not travel at sea in all directions and only one.
Okay, so he's definitively concluding. So it's exactly, you're just proving my point. You have absolutely no evidence. You're the one saying, because I've never seen a unicorn, it can't exist. You're the one saying, because I didn't see Antarctica, it doesn't exist. You're the one making a draconian conclusion. We can decisively conclude, okay? You're establishing it as a fact, and you have nothing as evidence, absolutely nothing. You're saying, I can't see it, therefore it can't possibly exist. No, because you can't see the absolute frame doesn't mean the absolute frame doesn't exist, jackass. That's illogical, fuckhead, by your own reasoning, you dumb fucking duplicitous hypocrite. You don't even pay attention to your own fucking speech. You're giving speeches here about how people should fucking think, and you're violating your own fucking principles of your own fucking speech, you jackass. You're not supposed to conclude it can't be just because you can't see it, jackass. God, you're such a fucking steaming pile of turd.
Reference frame. Okay, so now that we have the introduction out of the way, let's go into the nitty-gritty. Okay, for that, I'm going to need to...
Oh, there won't be any nitty-gritty. But I'll save the nitty-gritty for a part 2. The cat wants to come in and fuck it. Yeah. And, yeah. You might as well. No point in being too aggressive. And the file might crash or something. I mean, I've probably been at this for an hour almost, yeah. So it's probably a good time for a break. So part 2 a-coming. What an asshole, though. I mean, just nothing. An absolute nothing argument. A fucking useless philosophy argument. I mean, just not a single shred of evidence. The trial, we're doing the trial. This is the trial. We're the lawyers. And your fucking argument is this babble. You don't put on a witness. You don't put on any statement. Your only statement is, we've proven there's no absolute frame because we didn't see one. I mean, fuck. That's the best you got? Fuck you.